What makes you happy?
Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ismael, and each week I bring to you a conversation, theme, or topic that will not only entertain you, but that will help you to change towards living a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better. In today's solo episode, I want to talk about disappointments and expectations. And for those who are watching online on YouTube, you may have noticed a different background. This is due to the fact that we are traveling at the moment, and I'm recording from a van in which we live for the next month, and I hope that the quality still is good. One of my biggest values is freedom, and therefore I have a setup that also works when working from a van. And I hope that there is no disadvantages for you guys watching me recording from the van or listening to the episode on Spotify anyways. And with that, I wish you a lot of fun and good learnings from this solo episode recorded from northern Spain. So in today's episode, we want to talk about a mindset change that will help you to never get disappointed again. Why should you care about that? Well, first of all, more than anything else, our expectations determine our reality. Pain in life comes then if our reality does not meet the expectations we had before. And therefore learning to live a happy life without any expectations will help us to never get disappointed again. So what are the three main takeaways of today's episode? The first one would be that a life without expectations is a life without disappointments. The second one is that life doesn't owe us anything. So stop expecting and start accepting and practicing gratitude instead. And the third one is to crush comparison and accept yourself and others the way they are. And in fact, for today's topic, I don't have books or authors of articles to credit. I am aware that there is a lot of articles and books and content about expectations and how to let loose of such, but lately I have not really consumed them, so I cannot recommend them. If you nevertheless have something that you would want to recommend to me or to the Just Another Mindset community as a whole, please feel free to share valuable links, good books, or authors of articles, and I will distribute so accordingly. And with that, I would like to start today's episode with a thought experiment. My first question to you guys is, what is disappointment? So I invite you to take a minute or two to think about disappointment. When was the last time you were disappointed? What happened and by whom were you disappointed and why? Also, can we agree that we should seek for the truth even though it's painful? That we should always try to figure out what is true and what is real? And therefore, is it not true that every time you get disappointed, you get a little bit closer to the truth, to reality, because you may have uncovered something that you didn't know yet? Disappointment is defined as the sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. What does that mean? That basically means that we get disappointment because our hopes or expectations are not fulfilled. Which means that if we get rid of our expectations, we can also get rid of a lot of disappointment in our lives. After all, pain in life comes if reality does not meet the expectations. So the logical approach would be to get rid of expectations altogether. But let's take a look if that is even possible. So the next question is, what are expectations? Expectations, more than anything else, determine our reality. And expectations are defined as the strong belief that something will happen or be the case. And with that, I want to invite you again to take a minute, or 5 if you need them, to write down the current expectations that you have. What is expectations that you have on your partner, on your family members, on your friends, and also on yourself? Take a sheet of paper and write down the first 5 to 10 expectations that come to mind, and try to be as honest as possible if you can. When having done that, I want to invite you to classify your expectations. To me, there's 2 big buckets of expectations, the one from the past and the one from the future. So let's take a look at either of them and the dangers of such. So what are dangers of past expectations? Again, expectations are the strong belief that something will happen or be. And unmet expectations about the past can create grief, regret and sorrow, shame and sadness. So be honest with yourself. When did you last experience those emotions? Which expectations were linked to those events? Which of the expectations that you wrote down in the step earlier may cause those emotions if something is not gonna happen, if something is not gonna be, if your expectations are not gonna be met? And that brings us to the second category of expectations. Future expectations, I want to call them. The danger here is that projected unmet expectation can cause a lot of problems as well. They include depression, anxiety, feelings of inadequacy and impatience, and in extreme terms, hopelessness. So again, take a look at the expectations that you wrote down earlier. The expectations that you have for your partner, for your friends, for your family members, and for yourself. And try to understand what can happen, which emotions can be triggered if those expectations are not met. On yourself, on people you love. Are you afraid to experience any of those named emotions in the near future? Hopefully, you got a clear understanding of what your expectations are, and I invite you to continue with this exercise, not only for 5 or 10 minutes, but to really write down what your expectations are. Because only if you know what you want to work on, only if you understand the impact that the expectations can have, there is a way to solve it. There is a way to make things better. So let's take a look and see what happens if we live a life where we do not have expectations at all. So what happens if you don't expect anything? Well, easy put, you would simply accept things the way they are and deal with them. Likely, your judgment of things would be much more objective because you wouldn't compare your expectations with the met reality for people, for experiences, and for activities. Without expectations, the acceptance of status quo, the acceptance of what is infinitely easier. So I argue that you can have a much happier life if you live with little or even no expectations on yourself, but especially on other people. If there is no expectations, there will also be no disappointments. Again, the truth is that life doesn't owe you anything. So stop expecting and start accepting and showing gratitude for what you have and what is. So let's picture a life without expectations. I know that this might be a thought experiment to begin with, and that you will not get rid of all your expectations from one day to the other, and you're not meant to do so. But I invite you to really play that through, to understand the importance, to understand the impact of expectations, to understand the impact of expectations on your life, and then to go from there, step by step. And maybe in a week from now, maybe in a month from now, and maybe in a year, or even in 10 years from now, you can say that you have less or little or no expectations anymore, and that therefore you also don't have disappointments anymore. And I would be super interested to hear from you if this thought experiment does make sense, if you agree or disagree, and what kind of expectations you have on yourself, your friends, your family, and maybe even your colleagues. So in a life without expectations, no disappointments will follow if we do accept the things they are and don't fight them. If we're starting to practice gratitude instead of always asking for more, and if we recognize that the only person we can control in our lives is ourselves, really. You will not be able to control someone only because you put high expectations on him or her. You can only control the actions of yourself. You are the one who you can always trust. And you are the one who can face your fears and make sure not to feel empty. So that much on expectations on yourself. But what about expectations on other people? Well, to be honest, expectations on other people can only backfire. There is no way that the relationship of you and the other person will benefit from it. If the other person meets your expectations, it's just good enough. If the other person exceeds your expectations, maybe you feel good for a very brief moment, but therefore you will up your expectations for the next time, and it is inevitable that at some point this person, this relationship will disappoint you. Expectations can only cause negative emotions. So anytime I expect something from someone, I expect someone to act, talk, think, or move in a way that I would like, I always start comparing their reality, their actual behavior to my expectations. And this can only go wrong. You should not expect other people to do anything for you. If somebody chooses to do something nice to you, if somebody chooses from free will to do something that will make you happy, how awesome is that? But if somebody does something only to please you, if somebody does something only because they are expected to do so, it's not a free will activity. It's not something that will create long-lasting happiness and excitement for them, and neither for you. It only then becomes a favorable action if it's done because the other person really wants to do something. So please do not expect anything from anyone. I want to give you a few examples that hopefully help you to understand expectations a little bit better. And again, I also invite you to engage, to agree or to disagree on my point of view on expectations. Is it something that we share? Or do you have a different understanding of expectations? Do you think expectations might be something good? Do you have a whole different understanding of the correlation of expectations and disappointments? Anyways, I'm super interested to hear from you if you do agree or if you do disagree on this thought experiment. And before we take a look at the examples, we can understand that each action triggers a consequence. There is no expectations whatsoever on other people, on ourselves. But still, each action obviously has a consequence. If person A does action 1, I might react in a certain way. If person A does action B, my reaction might differ. There's different consequences for different actions, and different actions trigger different events and different experiences. Let's take a look at the first example, and that is changing your partner. So you invest a lot of time into a relationship. He or she probably does the same. And probably you even have an expectation that he or she does the same. But is that really necessary? And how about, instead of expecting your partner to be a certain way, to change a certain way over time, you start to accept your partner exactly the way they are, and you expect them to be exactly the way they are. If you come to peace of how your partner actually is, if you stop wanting to change your partner, only then you will have the foundation for a healthy relationship that is long-lasting. And my experience, my very personal experience of course, has shown me that the more you accept your partner that you're in a relationship with, the way they are, the more they will in fact act in a way that you are looking for. The more you accept your partner, the less you want to change your partner in a relationship, the more space for happiness and common joy is created. And one key element is to really not compare your relationship with any other relationship. Don't compare your relationship to the relationship of your best friend with someone. Just make sure that you are happy with what you have. Make sure that you are in good terms with the status quo, and that you are not looking to change your partner and expecting life to be better once that changes. Make sure to openly communicate with your partner what is good and what is not good, and stop expecting each other to change. The less you expect each other to change, the more acceptance and the more gratitude you show towards your partner, the happier of a relationship you will have. At least this is an approach that has worked for me. Another example is a promotion or a bonus at your workplace. So let's assume that you're working additional hours, that you work hard on a project that either interests you or that you do so because you expect a certain reward. You expect a bonus, you expect a promotion, you expect a better salary, or you expect to be seen, you expect to be heard. Well, what happens if whatever you are expecting does not come to reality? You're not being promoted. You're not getting the bonus that you were promised. What happens? You get disappointed. You get frustrated. Sometimes you even start not liking your job, not liking your boss, not liking your managers anymore. The workplace has a big potential for frustrations because there's a lot of expectations, especially if there's promotions or salaries or bonuses involved. So again, if you try to get rid of your expectations, also in your workplace, if you accept that each action will have a consequence, that may help as well. Because now, if you're not getting promoted until the 1st of February, if you're not getting the salary raise until the 7th of July, or if you're not getting the bonus until the end of December, nothing can happen to you. Just agree first with yourself, and then also openly with your manager, with your boss, with your company, and set clear rules. What if that happens, and what if that not happens? And be honest with yourself. If, for whichever reason, your employer does not promote you and they have a good reason to talk about, then you may or may not discuss with them. So if something does not happen again and again, be consistent and quit your job. Find a different team within your company. Whatever the consequence that you defined is, go for it. Understand that each action or inaction triggers a consequence, and be clear about it. Be consistent about it, and you will not get disappointed again. And the third example I want to talk about is again with your partner. So let's assume that you and your partner have been in a relationship for some time. You invested time, you invested different resources, and you want to spend life together. You probably have the standard, an agreement that it's only the two of you. So what happens if one of the partners starts cheating? So your standard, your agreement with your partner is that nobody sees somebody else. So that is also an expectation you have on your partner. So you have a big disappointment if something changes. You have a disappointment if your partner goes and sees somebody else, if you expect your partner not to do so. But if you just have a standard, an agreement that this will not happen, and if you understand that if it indeed happens, there will be a consequence, it changes the perspective on things. If in the current state, your standard and your agreement is not to be with other people, and your partner breaches that understanding, that standard and that agreement, you will trigger a consequence. You will have a talk. If you get rid of expectations and simply have an agreement that each action that violates your relationship standards will have a consequence, you can get rid of a lot of disappointment again. And even the act of your partner cheating on you will not disappoint you anymore. You still have to deal with the consequence, but this consequence does not have the power to make you miserable anymore. If your partner seeks another mate, the sheer fact might still make you sad. But after all, isn't it better that you have a common ground, that you can talk about such emotions, that you can talk about such actions? Isn't it better to accept that change, to talk about that change, and to see which consequences will follow of that change? Isn't it better to have an open communication and not be disappointed because there are expectations involved? You will for sure have to deal with the consequences. But taking out expectations out of your everyday life, out of your romantic relationships, out of your work relationships, and out of any of your relationships really, will help you not to get disappointed again. So what is the best antidote for expectations? The first one is to practice gratitude. to learn to accept the things the way they are and to be thankful for them. If you learn to let go of your unrealistic expectations on yourself, on your partner, on other people in your life, an open road unfolds in front of you, one full of new possibilities, opportunities, joy and happiness, all of which you can be grateful for. Another antidote for expectations is to crush comparison and accept yourself and other people the way they are, whether face to face or in social media. Stop comparing yourself to other people and accept yourself the way you are. Accept your human nature. Accept your characteristics, physically and psychologically, and embrace the person who you are. Focus on your own well-being. And also, again, do not expect other people to change the way you would like them to change towards. Not your family members, not your partner, not your friends, and not your colleagues at work. We learned today how dangerous expectations can be, and that they will only lead to disappointment. And therefore, it's much healthier not to have any expectations on any other people, and to accept them the way they are instead. And with that, I want to end this brief solo episode on expectations and how not to get disappointed again. Before we go, I have a few questions that I would love to hear about from you. What are your biggest disappointments? What are your current expectations? Remember the exercise we did at the very beginning of this podcast episode. What is your expectations on yourself, on your partner, on your friends, on your family members, and on your colleagues? Try to write down those expectations and try to classify them. If this is past expectations they were not met, or if this is expectations you have for the future. And what are the steps that you will take in order to get rid of some of your expectations, or even all of your expectations? Do you even agree that you can get rid of your expectations and that this would be a good thing after all? And what for you is the difference of standards, being the current state, and expectations, being the future state? And what kind of standards do you have for your relationships with yourself, with your partner, with friends, family, and colleagues? Again, I would be delighted to hear from you and to hear what is your view on expectations, and do you agree that you can get rid of a lot of disappointments if you only get rid of your expectations in life? Have you tried getting rid of expectations, and where did you struggle? Where did you fail to do so? If you enjoy this podcast and learn from it, please feel free to share this episode with a friend or two, and make sure to subscribe to the Just Another Mindset podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please use the next 10 seconds to give the Just Another Mindset podcast a rating, and know that you will help me to create more meaningful content like this, and also that it will help other people to find this content and get inspired as well. If there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a mail directly to contact@ismaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.
Do more of what makes you happy.
Be yourself. Positive.
Change.
Just another mindset.